Hello everyone, congratulations on getting your entire engine completely disassembled, but now it's time to put it all back together and hope she runs. So for this part one of the reassembly process, you're going to need a few tools. First, you're going to need a ring compressor. You're also going to need a ratchet with a 1/2-inch socket. You're also going to need a torque wrench with a 5/16 socket. And you'll also need some lubricant or some oil, and you'll be using that quite frequently throughout the reassembly process just to make sure all of the parts are lubricated and do not grind on each other while the engine is running. So, to get things started, the first thing that you're going to want to do is set up your ring compressor and your piston. So, as I mentioned, it's going to be very important that parts are lubricated, and it's going to make it a lot smoother for your piston to be placed within your engine. So here's how it's going to work. Okay? First, you're going to open up your lubricant. And what I like to do is I just kind of like to stick my finger into the bottle just to get my finger just greased up just enough. Okay? Then you are going to put lubricant around the outside of your piston. Set it down. You're going to do the same thing, and you're going to put lubricant around the inside of your ring compressor, like so. Kind of see what I'm doing here? Okay. And then what you'll do is you are going to put the piston and you're going to align it within your ring compressor. Now, go back to the disassembly modules and you're going to want to see what way your piston was oriented. I told you guys to take a picture of how the piston looked, and for me at least, the letters that are on the piston were pointing the way you normally would read it. So many of you guys probably have the same thing, but again, double check your picture that you took in that section and make sure that it applies to you. Okay? So you're going to want to open up your ring compressor, and then you're going to want to slide in your piston as best as you can, and then you're going to want to tighten it. Okay? So righty-tighty, lefty-loosey here. Once you have successfully installed your piston into your ring compressor, one thing you're going to want to also do is grab some lubricant, and again, just dip your finger in, and you're going to want to add lubricant to the inside where the piston will be going. So again, it allows for the piston to move freely up and down during the different strokes. Okay, so got enough in there. Then what you're going to do is you are going to install your piston at this point. Once you've gotten your piston and the inside all lubricated, what you're going to do is you're going to grab your ring compressor and you're just going to firmly press in until the piston is level with the surface. It'll look like that. Again, you're going to want to make sure that the letters on the piston are oriented in the same way that they were when you disassembled your engine. You're also going to want to make sure that everything is lubricated. So really make sure that you do that before you put your engine back together so all of the parts run smoothly when it's time to run the engine here in a couple days. So now that you've successfully reinstalled your piston, it's time to attach the connecting rod cap. And this is going to be placed at the bottom of your connecting rod like the name implies. What you're going to want to do is, it's going to be really hard to see on camera, but this is what it looks like. So you see two little fasteners and then the base, and then this is called the oil dipper. And again, our engines have an oil dipper. The oil dipper basically reaches down, grabs that oil and flings it around just so everything stays lubricated while the engine is in operation. And what you're going to want to do is you're just going to go in there, put the two threads up, and you're going to kind of tighten it with your fingers, and eventually what you're going to want to do is grab your torque wrench. This is your torque wrench, and you're going to want to torque the base to 100 inch-pounds. Now, the thing to remember about this is you don't just want to go over to one of them and tighten it all the way up to 100 right away. You got to spread the level a little bit. So you got to start off with the one on the outside and do 33, and then go to 33 on the one on the inside, and then go to 66, and then go to 66, and then make it to 100 on both of them eventually. So you're going to have to do about 6 different torques in order to successfully reinstall your base. So once you have successfully installed the base of your connecting rod, it's time to make sure that you can fully rotate. But before you do that, one thing I'd recommend is Sometimes it's going to be pretty hard for you to reach in there and like tighten up the bolts with just your hands. So you might want to grab a ratchet and your 5/16 socket and just reach in and kind of tighten up those bolts yourself before you actually advance to what I'm about to do. So we've tightened it up with our hands and with the ratchet and just enough, and we'll go with the torque wrench here in a little bit. But then you're going to want to rotate the crankshaft, and you can kind of see the connecting rod makes a full revolution around the crankcase in here. So we know that everything is secure and our piston is operating and is in good working condition. So after you've confirmed this and there's no loose parts or anything, then you can go ahead and grab your torque wrench and torque to the specified recommendation, which for this engine again is 100 inch-pounds. Once you have perfectly installed your piston and your connecting rod and your connecting rod cap, it is now time to insert and reinstall your camshaft and your tappet valves. So the first thing you're going to want to do is insert your tappet valves. The tappet valves look just like this. Okay, they're identical. Doesn't matter which slot in the engine they go into. So all you're going to have to really do is just go in and install them and kind of push them in a little ways, and they should stay there. So I put the one in and then got the second one in. So both of them are staying in place. Those are your tappet valves. Check that off the list. The next thing you got to do is install your camshaft. Now, your camshaft and your crankshaft need to be aligned in a particular way. There's these little marks on the camshaft and the crankshaft known as timing gears and timing marks. You can kind of see that little dimple on this that my index finger is pointing to. That is a timing mark. And what you're going to want to do is make sure that that timing mark lines up with the timing mark on your crankshaft. So you might have to do a little bit of rotation of that crankshaft in order to make sure that happens. Now, the reason why, as we talked about in this class, that we want to make sure that these align is because the timing marks ensure that the crankshaft and the camshaft are communicating and opening the valves and closing the valves at the appropriate time for the appropriate stroke. So it's going to be very important that those are aligned like we have done here. So we see that the two marks on the crankshaft are aligned with a little dimple on our camshaft. So now when we start our engine up in a couple days, we'll be able to ensure that our crankshaft and camshaft are intact, and that also our valves will be opening and closing at the correct time for the correct stroke of our cycle. Our last part of our assembly process for part 1 video here today, folks, is going to be to reinstall your crankcase cover. Now, what you're first going to want to do is make sure that your gasket is in good shape, because you want to make sure that your gasket is working to allow for proper separation between the different parts of the engine. We're going to want to make sure that we replace gaskets that are broken or kind of peeling away. In our case, you may or may not be able to see it, but there is a nice solid section in here where it's just the metal is completely exposed. Our gasket's just frayed and broken, so it's going to be important for us to install a brand new gasket or have gasket maker at hand so we can just kind of fill in those locations that are absent. So in our case, we have a nice gasket right here. I'm simply just going to very carefully and cautiously place it in the correct location and slide it up tight against the backing over here. And then, of course, we have our crankcase right here. So obviously what you're going to want to do is just kind of slips on, just like we took it off, pretty easy. Okay. There we go. Slips on. Might have to kind of adjust things a little bit, but there we go. And then you should have your bag with your crankcase bolts in it. And you're going to want to make sure that these crankcase bolts are torqued to approximately 100 inch-pounds. And you can, like I said, confirm that on the check chart that's located at the front of the shop by the storage room. And you can also refer to page number 201 of your repair manual. Page 201 does a really nice job, especially in figure number 35, outlining the star pattern. Now, this is something that I talked a little bit about at the beginning of the school year, but I'm just going to refresh your mind right now. You don't want to just install your bolts in any which fashion or just go right around in a circle, because that's going to allow for uneven torquing. You want to make sure that you are putting in your bolts in a specific pattern, a star pattern, to make sure that all sides of the engine are being torqued at a correct proportion at the same time, kind of like I referred to a little bit with the connecting rod cap. So what you're going to want to do is follow that pattern in your repair manual, or just kind of make a star pattern on your own. It really doesn't matter which one you start and end at, as long as you are kind of going from one section to the next section and not just going in a circle. So we are going to go ahead and get that torqued to 100 inch-pounds right now. Just to make our lives a little bit easier, I just wanted to show you guys an example of that star pattern in case you wanted a little bit of a refresher, just kind of want to see that visual come to life a little bit. So again, you can follow that pattern in the book, or you can also just kind of make your own star pattern. So for example, my version of letter A, according to this book, will be right here. So I'll kind of tighten it up with my fingers, okay? Then I might go over to B, and B is over here, okay? So tighten that up with your finger a little bit. And then go over to C over here, and go down to D, and go to E, F, G. So just as long as all of your bolts are getting tightened in kind of a star pattern, you will be in good shape, and you'll make sure that all of the parts of the crankcase cover are being torqued at a proportionate and correct level.